Thank you, Moses. And the news continues. The second hour of News Hour. We begin with our discussion tonight on the round table. I have my guests already seated here. And let's begin our discussion tonight by looking back at the same day today. That's today in history 5 years ago. As we wait for that to be pulled up, we'll be taking a look at the Standard newspaper. All right, that's the Standard newspaper on the same date, March 13th. It was a Friday back in 2020. That was the headline. Ruto faces Raila test. Old Forest, new monkeys. History repeats itself as Deputy President then walks the very path of political humiliation that crushed the dreams of ODM leader under the Nusum Kate government. Remember, this was just 2 years after the handshake with President Uhuru Kenyatta at that time. So we were reporting about Ruto facing the same test Raila Odinga faced during the Nusum Kate. But that's not it. Look at the sub-headline also down there. Kenyans start to feel the corona hit. And that was the outset of corona in March of 2020. And there was a lot. Sports was cancelled, exports stopped, aviation, airplanes stopped, flying, education, schools were under threat of being closed. Eventually, they were closed for close to 2 years, and of course, the economy ground to a halt. That is history 5 years to the date today, 13th of March, 2020. All right, a lot of things happening in the country. There's a lot to talk about tonight. That's why I invited 2 advocates and 1 lawyer. So there are 2 advocates and 1 here, and we want to talk about issues affecting the country tonight. Lempar Soyinka is a lawyer. He's a former journalist, and we'll begin right there, former journalist. And of course, my friend, Fanya Mambo Kinuthia. People still don't believe that's your name.
I usually tell them to send me M-Pesa
and they will find out.
Yes.
Should I try?
Yes.
Then I can reverse. Thank you so much, Lempa, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Let me begin with that. Today, WAC Party, 21 organizations met and released a press statement. The media feels some heavyweight from the national government. Specifically, this is the second time this is being tried, and it's viewed as if they want to push media to a corner. Alternatively, they just want to extinguish the media, kill the media in totality. Being a former broadcaster, listening to what we are saying right now, how does that sit with you as a lawyer?
It's foolhardy for anyone to think or to even encompass a situation whereby only the public broadcaster is actually functional. If you look at the majority of journalists in this country, this regime talks about creating jobs. If, for example, you are to do what Professor Kisiangani is saying, where will all those journalists go to? First of all,
but do they care?
They should care, because those are among other promises that they made in their pre-election campaign, that they are going to create jobs. And media is a very important component in a democracy. If you scuttle the media, or if there is no functional media, all these scandals would like to happen under the table. You realize that over the years, the media has been very, very critical in uncovering scandals, from Goldenberg, from Anglo-Leasing, all those big scandals. It's the media that enlightens the society. The media plays a very important role, and that role cannot be left to the state broadcaster, because private media is also very crucial, because it's like imagining that you can have schools in Kenya without private schools, or you can have the government without the civil society.
I'll be asking you if they have a point, but let me ask Fanyamambo, do you think they can succeed where others failed? Because this is not the first attempt at scuttling or muzzling the media. It's just furthering this agenda. But now they know they pinch where it hurts most. Do you think there's a likelihood of success here?
To start with, I think I want to invite us to look at Article 35 of our Constitution that speaks about the right to access to information. And so if there is a right to access to information, and especially 1B, the information held by another person required for the exercise of protection of right of a fundamental freedom. So the state has decided that for a long time, Kenyans have been receiving information Because sometimes some of these adverts are not just advertisements. Some of them is information about a polio campaign, for example, that is important for every other Kenyan wherever they are. And so if I've not been tuning to the national broadcaster and something as important as a polio campaign is happening, I need to have the right to that information. So I think when we look at it from the province of Article 35 of our Constitution, that some of the government advertisements are not just advertisements. They are actually an invitation to, or a call to action. There's a polio campaign coming up, or they are planning an international conference that is going to happen at KICC that could change our lives on construction, on whatever it is, even new types of medicine and so on. There's a lot that happens. So these advertisements is like access to information on government. If they, for example, they want to start telling us that they are giving us this subsidized fertilizer that they have been talking about, which, I mean, I have always had my reservations about, that is critical information for every farmer. And not every farmer is tuned to the national broadcaster. So they need to disseminate that information that is critical to every other user in a station or in a way that we can get to them. In fact, if it was possible to even pay, you know, nowadays there's a lot of TikTok and all, but make sure that in all media spheres, this information is disseminated.
Very interesting. Don't you think they may, you want to say something, but
yes.
Don't you think they have a justification before I go to Lempa?
No, I'd like to say this. Yeah. I'd like to say this. To start with, let us do an audit of taxation. How much money do we get, or does government get, from privately owned media houses? If you were to think of the Standard Group, for example, and just think of the employees and how much is going, you know, just look at the pay slip of each employee times the number of employees here, from the drivers to the managerial team to people like yourself. There's just too much money that these media houses give to government in terms of taxes, probably more than the national broadcaster. So it is okay for government to take taxes from you but not give you business. And also think about in terms of employment. This government is out there running and promising Kenyans jobs in Germany. I don't know why in Germany. And already media houses have established themselves here and creating job opportunities for our people. And I think what we should be doing is saying, wait a minute, before we punish these people, or before we make things difficult for them, they are already employing so many people, they are already creating opportunities for so many people, and there is, I mean, it's also changing the economy. When you think of Standard Group, I keep thinking of the number of pickups you have that are out there distributing newspapers, and the diesel they are consuming, and the tires, and so on and so much. I mean, it is shooting yourself in the arm when you decide to take everything to the national broadcaster. Okay. Because the media out there that is privately owned is also giving the government a lot of money in taxation. Okay. But you have been around, you have worked with the media. I mean, could you try to find any justification as to this move? Why the national government, the Ministry of ICT, would just be hell-bent towards doing such a thing? I mean, could you try and find justification over the years, even with the evolution of the media houses?
Thank you very much for that question. I would like actually to add on what my colleague has said, Mr. Kinuthia. If you look at Article 10, first of all, there is something called people participation. And if you read the law, like MCA and all those other laws, like, you find that people participation requires that you publish some of these some of the policies of the government in a newspaper of national circulation.
But it doesn't specify which
you
one.
Realize that the Kenya Gazette is not a newspaper of national circulation.
Yes. But it doesn't specify.
So therefore, what I'm saying is that the government does not, KBC does not have a newspaper. So that if, for example, Kisiangani were to make good his threat, how would people participation, which is a national value, be carried out? As for justification, there can never be any justification, because you cannot, as my colleague has said, only take taxes from the private media, but deny them business. In any case, this has been tried over years, but it has failed. This country requires it requires the efforts of so many people for it to grow. For us to realize Dream Kenya doesn't mean that only the government should give business to government. It has been tried before, but it has not succeeded. I don't think, from the legal point of view, from social point of view, from economic point of view, there is no justification for Mr. Edward Kisiangani, professor, to issue such threats.
So what is the recourse? What alternatives do we have as the independent media outlets? What are we supposed to do here, apart from going to court?
Of course, there are so many. You could do lobbying, because there are so many things that can be done. People talk of Article 159 on alternative dispute resolution mechanism. I don't think there is a dispute in place for us to invoke the alternative dispute mechanism. But I think media practitioners should meet like they did today. That's very commendable, and come up with very diverse strategies on how to counter such draconian moves. Draconian move that is being taken by the PS or by the government, because you cannot separate the government you cannot separate the PS from the entire government. So it's very crucial for media practitioners and even Kenyans to actually come and support the media, because the media plays a very important role in the democratization of any state.
But that's a language that they don't understand. I'm looking for something that you think the government would understand in this, and you're not telling me.
The language that the government understands is the language of going to the streets. And if it is possible, I would not hesitate to join such a march.
You'd ask the media to take to the streets?
Of course, even advocates sometimes put on yellow ribbons and go to the streets. So the media should come up, should sit down. We should actually sit down as practitioners and come up with a language that this system
But
would
to what
understand.
end? What I'm not getting, gentlemen, is this is a constitutional right. Someone who doesn't just care about what the Constitution says, especially Article 35, decides this is not going to happen. And he sits and he doesn't just care. So to what end? That is what I'm not getting. I mean, why don't we talk about trying to implement the letter and spirit of the Constitution? They're looking around for solutions for something that is so obvious. Why do we do it?
In fact, the Constitution is so good. If, for example, this government were to adhere to the letter and the spirit of the Constitution, most of these problems will not be there. But look at it from even a broader perspective. We go to court, sometimes they do not comply with the court orders. And you realize that the government is the biggest consumer of the rule of law, because should the citizens follow the government's example of not complying with the law, the government is to lose, because we'll not be paying taxes. And the government, I have always told my friends that our government is a very proud beggar, because the government depends on our taxes to run its functions. And at the end of it all, it punishes you if you don't tell it how much you have given it in June, before June 30th, and for business enterprises, for VAT, before 20th of every month. So we are faced with a very proud beggar, a beggar that tells you that I'm only going to cherry pick what is good for me, which you must sponsor and tell me how much you have given to me, failure to which I take an action against you. So the language that this government understands, to me, for a very long time, is a language of demonstration, language of within the law, because demonstrating is allowed. The right to picket, the right to express yourself, and it is not for the government to choose where and how to express yourself.
Fanyamambo, how far can we take this as media houses, independent media houses, especially the ones that are likely to suffer because of this?
I think to start with, the wearer of the shoe sometimes knows where it bites and how. And I think if you put your heads together, definitely a good solution will be found to this. But from where I sit also, the media has got something they do. I mean, the bulk of this, even the ministers, the CSs, if you ask them, do you want to go to a show on that place where you want to take your adverts, or do you want to come to KTN? They will run here in the morning. Kisiangani himself is made by the private media. We got to know him because he spent more time on private media than on that national media that he wants
As an analyst.
Yeah, as an analyst.
Yes.
So what I'd like to say is the media needs
Yeah.
to say, wait a minute, we also have something we can withdraw. I mean, you have a state function, we are not coming. You have this, there's no law that forces the media to go and cover anything that they are doing. And if their national broadcaster is the only thing that is airing what they are doing, we will realize that, wait a minute, it's only getting to those people who follow that broadcaster. And within a week or so, they'll be looking for you. So I think you need to also realize that you have something that they need. And the media needs to say, wait a minute, we also can switch off our cameras to some of these functions and just stay at home. And yes, we have an excuse. We don't have fuel to fuel our vehicles to come there. After all, you took away some of the things that used to help us do that. So I think media needs to sit and media needs to say, wait a minute, we've closed our doors and we're having a conversation, and come out of the conversation, not like victims, but like victors and people who have got something in their hands that they can use to fight.
I had to start with that. It's very close home. But let me bring in an aspect of some of the things that have been happening in the country. So yesterday, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee found a way to ensure that we have back the CSs in circulation. Let me begin with you, Kinuthia, again. I mean, this is something that was clearly, even if you read the mood, and if you look at how much the government is already expending out there, and if you look at how big the government is, it was against the mood of everyone, yet they found a way. Well, JLAC Parliament, and we know where the majority lies, and now they found a way to bring the CSs.
I have always said, and I will always say, have you ever heard this story of we found empty coffers and other funny stories? This is it, that a government that found empty coffers today insists on having CASs being paid close to northwards of $1 million every month. A government that found empty coffers is, and the controller of budgets told us, they are buying curtains for the DP's residence at 10 million. I mean, a house that cost 400 million to build is being renovated at 600 million. It's the excrescence that we are talking about, a very insensitive government, because this is just a sample, and it's an example of what's going on. I usually say the salary of one CAS can build one classroom. And we have children who are still standing under 360 years after independence. I mean, the amount of money that is being allocated to renovation of State House, $1 billion, means 1,000 classrooms for our children. So it's just a very, very, very insensitive government. A government that appears not to listen and not to care. Why do you need to have those CASs there? Who asked for them? For the period that we have been without them, what have we lost as a nation? And the question should have been, instead of having these small demigods that we are trying to create, I don't know for what reason, I think the question should have been, how do we allocate that money to more important things for this nation? And this is, for me, where I usually tell people, you voted for a very insensitive government. Because the fact that already Kenyans have said no, and we are not interested in you creating more offices. I remember Kenya Kwanza went around the country saying that they do not want a bloated government. They are the ones who actually fought BBI. And I remember the former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta saying, BBI is just a deferred thing. One day, someday, it's going to come and happen. Now, these people now are the ones here trying to increase the size of government and to create a bloated government on Wanjiko, who is already suffering. I think it is insensitive, and I think it is ill-intended. It is not good for this nation at this point in time.
Lempa, is this conversation counterproductive? Because someone will ask, why are we having this conversation? I mean, it's after the fact. They found a way to do it.
Yeah, my colleague calls it, I would rather call it irresponsible government. We have a very irresponsible government. He gives an example of a salary of one CAS actually constructing a class. I have always calculated the salary that is paid to even a member of parliament capable of employing about 50 teachers, about 20 primary teachers and about 10 high school teachers. And if you look at Article 201 or Chapter 12 of the Constitution, it talks about prudent use of public resources. This is where the system, this regime has failed completely. You do not just reward your political friends by violating the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear on the number of the offices that it has created and the powers that it has given to different people. You don't just wake up you don't just wake up and decide that we are going to create these type of jobs and give it to certain people. I find a lot of confusion in the system because looking at the government spokesperson, my good friend Honorable Mwaura, is a CAS. And therefore, you ask yourself, is he a CAS or a government spokesperson? And others. When the High Court declared that position unconstitutional, the government tried to fix those guys or the CAS in different other places within the government. And you wonder, are there empty coffers or it's just a question of let's eat because it's our time to eat? It's so sad. Our children are crying for lack of teachers, good learning environment. You go to some primary schools and high schools, you really cry as a Kenyan that we are exposing our children to such type of environment. And this can be cured only if we applied the prudent use of national resources as provided for in the Constitution. We would not be trying to invent a wheel. It's there, it's in black and white. If only you took the Constitution from chapter 1 to chapter 18 and implemented it. All these things that we are complaining about, day in, day out, talking, having shows about how the government is overspending or misusing public coffers, would not be there.
Is it counterproductive to talk about this so that you tell me, let's move on to something that is more important like healthcare that is supported?
No, let's talk about it. I've always told Kenyans, the Kenya Kwanza administration is a perfect example of how not to run government. Because if you need an example, an illustration, something that you can always point children to and tell them you should never do things the wrong way, you just tell them, for example, Kenya Kwanza. Don't employ too many CSs. For example, Kenya Kwanza. Don't appoint ministers who have been implicated in a lot of corruption cases. For example, Kenya Kwanza. I keep saying they first appointed very many CASs, and then now they went through the heinous job of trying to withdraw cases that had been there against these CSs, and so on and so forth. So it's a good example, a living example that can be used to teach children in the future or even people within the region on how never to run government, how never to do things, how horribly never to make decisions. So, sometimes, and I usually say there's a problem because people don't understand things unless you have a living example. So the Kenya administration becomes a good example that people can always point to. Never do things like those people. Never do this like those people. Because people in Rwanda need to know how bad you can do things. And they need an example. And this is a living example. They are told, for example, in Kenya, they are saying they have empty coffers, but they want to employ new CASs. For example, in Kenya, they are saying they want to fight corruption, but they started by appointing the ministers who had the highest number of corruption cases. And then they had to drop those cases. So it's good to discuss. It's good to have this conversation because now it becomes a teaching aid for people. And when people are studying how to have a kakistocracy, a government that you choose the worst of people to run things, then there is a living example and you can always point and you can always say who has got what cases and what type of...
I mean, there has to be something the government is doing right. It can't just be all gloom and doom. Are you trying to...
Yes, there is something. There is.
No, there must be.
There is, I'll tell you. There is.
Something good they're doing.
Yes, something good they're doing.
Yes.
I want you to think about it this way. Every time the government needs to do something, and they need it practically done, and they want it to happen, they come for your salary. They budget for his salary. They raid into your coffers. They take that money because they know money is needed to build whatever it is they want to build, including a new presidential diocese state house that we don't know what it's for. But every time Wanjiko needs something, they are told that interdenominational prayers, not money, interdenominational prayers will solve your problem. If Wanjiko needs dams so that they can have water to water their farms, they are brought for an international preacher just around the season when it's about to rain to pray for them so that they get rainwater because that is what will water their farms, not the government building dams for them. So I think to the extent that they are taking Kenyans closer to the church, to the extent that they are taking Kenyans closer to the church is a good thing. And I've always told them then, If prayers are working for Kenyans,
Yes.
if when Kenyans have a problem, they are told to pray, and they are brought international preachers to pray for them, why don't we take Benny Hinn to Central Bank? And he prays for that money and multiplies our coffers, because prayers appear to work for everybody. We cannot be having a situation whereby prayers, every time you have a problem as Mwananchi, you are told to go the prayer direction. But every time the government needs money, they come for money from your pocket. If prayers are working for Mwananchi, they must work for government as well. And we want Benny Hinn to come back. Hata isifikiri ndege imefika, irudi ikiwa kwa hewa, akuje apelekwe Central Bank, aombe pesa ya Central Bank, multiply, then we can be able to run this nation on that money. But we cannot have a situation whereby prayers are working for Wanjiko, but they're not working for government.
I'm just wondering how that's a positive thing.
Yeah, actually, to add on what he's saying, I would actually call on Benny Hinn to come and go to Samburu, to go and pray for the people who are being massacred by bandits in Samburu and other places. Because to me, relying on prayers, maybe the thing they are doing best is actually to eat. That's the only example I can give. That the best example that I can say that this Kenya Kwanza regime has done perfectly is eating. We read in newspapers, we see, we watch in social media them putting on watches worth 2 million shillings, putting on belts of 425,000 shillings, and all that kind of thing. So actually the best that I can give, the best thing this regime has done is actually to be spendthrift, in my own view. Because I cannot say, for example, that they have stopped bandits from killing people in Samburu, West Pokot and other places, that everything appears to be going in the wrong direction. You do not just bring a preacher to entrench metaphysics on things that we can do.
What do you mean to entrench metaphysics on things we can
Prayers
do?
is all about metaphysics.
What do you mean?
We know for free that if Ken Mijungu is sitting for an exam tomorrow and Lemba is sitting for the same exam, and Lemba goes to pray, and Mijungu spends most of his time in the library
Reading.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Ken Mijungu will score an A, while Lempa would only be saying that mimi sijabarikiwa, nitabarikiwa baadaye. That's what it means. If we want to, for example, create jobs, you don't just go to church to create jobs. You build factories. I have always discussed with a friend of mine about building flats. Every Kenyan, every cabinet minister, every PS has a flat. And you know a flat employs only one person.
Is that a statement of fact?
I can actually, yeah, it's a statement of fact.
That every PS, every cabinet secretary...
Every governor, every member of parliament is trying to put up a flat.
Okay.
A flat which is not a factory. Is, for example, all those people with money who are to put up factories would not require all these prayers. Because in a factory, there would be a driver, there will be an accountant, there would be what were mikono, there will be a wide range of people.
Flat has only one caretaker.
One caretaker. And that is what cabinet secretaries are doing.
Thinking.
So you spend 60 to 100 million to employ one person.
Yes, you put a flat in Syokimau, another one in Roy, another one in Githurai 45, another one in Zimmerman. You employ four people. And the people who are supposed to be building flats is Ken Mijungu, Lempa, and Fanyamambo, not ministers. Cabinet secretaries are supposed to start factories. Factories that employ all range of employees, including human resources manager. Have you ever had a human resource manager employed in a flat? Or even an accountant? We require practical and pragmatic steps in this country, like putting up factories where we employ people and not going to pray. You cannot build a 7-star church in Githurai 45 or in Kenol and no factory at all, and then the following morning you go there to pray for jobs. Actually, that is tempting God. As Jesus was being tempted in the desert, we are told that he spent 40 days in desert talking to Satan on how he could inherit the whole world. So if you pray without taking an action, you are tempting that God. And that is the biggest problem that this regime has done. Just investing in prayers instead of taking pragmatic and practical steps to create jobs for the youth.
Si uchawi ni maombi. Prayers work.
Maombi. Si ushawi, ni maombi.
Brilliant work. I mean, if it didn't work, rain, for example, you raised this issue. It seems it's a pertinent issue. You have also raised this issue, and I don't know why it's becoming a pertinent issue, because it's a choice at the end of the day. When Benihin is here, when whoever is here, it's a choice of Kenyans.
No,
it's a choice of the government.
It's not
to
a
invite
choice
people.
of government. First and foremost, there's need for transparency. Benihin does not travel to nations for free. We need to know how much it cost and how much he was paid to come here and who paid for his flights and whether it was a taxpayer's money. Because if you ask me, that money would have gone to better things and to improving the lives of Kenyans. I mean, we cannot be preyed out of poverty. I mean, China and I'm not saying we become atheists. I'm a believer myself, and I don't spread my faith to every other person because I'm not a preacher. But I can tell you the reason China is where it is and the other countries that are moving where they are is because they spend their time and money manufacturing and selling to us toothpicks. 60 years after independence, we can't make a handkerchief. It's a shame that even our smallest garments of clothing, the underwear, we still have to import from other people. So, I mean, we need to now start realizing that 60 years after independence, we should be having at least a bicycle made in Kenya. And this is the time when we should stop using toothpicks from other nations and so on and so forth. So I think from where I sit, we have a government whose priorities are upside down. I mean, when you talk of building the presidential dais of that amount of money, look at how much they were proposing for State House allocation. And you look at the figure and you're like, wait a minute. What is this they are going to be doing in State House?
But at the end of the day, President William Ruto will leave that to the next person. I mean, it's a national thing. It's not his. He'll leave it there.
Do you know, they were very clear. It is a dais. You know, a dais is a place you stand to address people. Why don't you be like Natembeya who stands on a table?
When he was campaigning, not now.
No, even now. Some of these things don't make sense. I mean, in a country like ours, where do you need a dais worth 600 million? What is a dais? A place to stand and address people, 600 million. Do you know what 600 million is? And I usually tell people it's a lot of money.
That's 60
and
classrooms.
In any case, you guys have good cameras to
it's actually
zoom
600 classrooms.
at any president.
600, yeah.
So a dais is to enable the president or the politician to be seen, isn't it? You have cameras which can zoom in. What is it for? Is it, I can't even fathom the spending 600 million.
To build a presidential dais at State House.
At State House.
That's equal to a whole house of a deputy president in Kenya, which was built at 400 million.
And then renovated at 600 million. It cost 400 to build. You know, Kenyans, let me explain to you. You go and buy a car for 400,000. You put it on the road. And then a few years down the line, you spend 600,000 with the mechanics fixing that car. And I don't even want to talk about it. It's a very sad state of affairs, this country we are in. And we found empty coffers plus other funny stories.
Let me talk now about the other topic. Haiti, what's happening? What is the interest of Kenya in Haiti?
I think the government is just being forced by the United States to send our 1,000 men. I read today that women are excluded from that mission. I don't know whether that one is in accordance with Article
We need
27.
2/3 gender rule.
I do not know
Even in Haiti.
Yeah, that's what I saw Kindiki say, that wherever we are taking our men is so dangerous, and I don't think women policemen in Kenya would be sent. I was wondering, who is forcing this type of business to our country? And you know, we are a sovereign state. Yes, we have shortages of jobs in this country, and we have a lot of labor that is looking for jobs. But we must not be so desperate as to take our children or our sons or daughters, if they probably change their mind and include daughters, to a country that is lawless. Because even if they'll be compensated once they are killed, our policemen do not speak. Our policemen speak probably Kiswahili, English, and probably mother tongue. And I am told when you learn to Haiti, you have to speak French or some Lingala.
I mean, they'll have Haiti police with them, so it's okay. They're not going to operate in isolation, so that
how long do you take to learn a language as to combat crime? Because I do not understand why America is so much interested in taking Kenyans to Haiti.
They added more money, $100 million, right? So now they're doing $300 million, if I'm not wrong, on this mission.
Why can't America itself send?
They declined just the last few days. They said they're not going to take the troops to that mission. I still want to understand, what is in it, Kenya?
I'll explain to you. I sat on this very table on Sunday, and we had this conversation about Haiti. And I don't mind repeating what I said. Number one, Haiti is 27,000 square kilometers. That's about the size of Mandera or slightly bigger than Isiolo. What are we doing as a nation having a conversation about a small state the size of Isiolo, many thousands of miles away from us? What will a state the size of Isiolo do for us? It's 27,000 square kilometers away
Same
from
as
here.
Rwanda.
Yes, so what are we doing here? That's the size of Rwanda. We are not supposed to be having that conversation about that country. I have asked how many Kenyans are in Haiti? Who trades with Haiti? Have you ever bought anything there? Have you ever sold anything there? Is there a Kenyan delegation there? Do we have any interest there? And the answer is no. To all those
Absolutely
questions.
nothing.
There's absolutely nothing that we have to do with Haiti. Then I go to the next question. Have we met the UN standards of the requirements of the number of police we need to have per citizen? And when
Very
you
far
come
off.
to, we are far off. We are
Very far
more
off.
than twice in terms of
800
yeah.
per one.
So
Yeah.
we are supposed to be thinking, and I've always said this is not a Kenya Kwanza administration, it's a Haiti Kwanza administration. Why it is a Haiti Kwanza administration is because if it was a Kenya Kwanza administration, we would be saying we have bandit attacks. And instead of sending our policemen to deal with the bandits in the country, we are sending them to deal with bandits in Haiti. I've always made a proposal. First, let's go to Marigat, where banditry is very high, and Capedo and everything. And for the first time, call out the bandits from the bush and tell them, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. There's a beautiful job for you. We take all the bandits, we send them to Haiti to deal with fellow bandits. We have secured our region as a country, and we have given them bandits because what they need on that side is bandits. And if these guys don't come back, we don't care anyway. We just need to lie to them that they are going for further studies in the US. And by the way, Haiti is very close to the US, so they will know that now they'll be told, this sea you are crossing, you're very close to the US. And when they land in Haiti, we don't even need them to come back. We shall have dealt with the bandit problem that we have in this country. And they're experienced shooters. They might survive, they might finish the problem, that's their issue. But then again, as a country, where are we? 100 million is being allocated by the US. Good, dollars. Fuck, that's good. Why don't they bring their young men here? We have some of the best training facilities for the army. The British Army is training in Nanyuki. We have the best training facilities in this country. Even the AP training camp here is a very good training space. So all we need is bring us very many Haitis, as long as you're paying for each of them to come here. We will train them. Pay us, we tell you the fee per, young Haitian that we train. We train them, put them in planes to go back and solve their problems. And by the way, they will leave a lot of money here. And because Nanyuki, sometimes we hear once in a while, there's a child who has been born and he looks like some of those young men who had come for training as wanajeshi from the British Army. It's okay, we shall have a few Haiti citizens born here and looking like Haitis, because
But
in
they
the
look
training
like us,
camps,
you
they'll
know.
interact with
Haitians
our
are
beautiful...
African.
Yeah, they look as- they
yeah.
look
No,
like
we will
us.
still know them
They are
because
Negroids.
they'll be speaking like bandits. But anyway, this is what we need as a country.
No, but gentlemen,
Let's train their young men here.
Yeah. But
to
you
go and deal
haven't-
with their problem.
neither you or Lempa has told me Kenya's interest.
We don't have an interest. And I've always said...
No, then why are we
Okay.
hell-bent?
Oh, then
Why
let
are
me
we
tell you.
hell-bent?
Let me tell you. I think what we need to do, and I think I've said this before, you've heard of these international conferences, and people are scrambling to go and attend international conferences. For the first time, I pray that our cabinet secretaries will accompany our policemen to Haiti, just the way they go for international conferences. They get into that plane. When our policemen are going to Haiti, our cabinet should go there, because it's a very nice place for our young people that they are insisting that our young people should go. The same way they scramble to go for conferences in the US and many other places. Our cabinet should go there and stay for a month with our policemen and then come back if they'll be able to come back. Then it will be a good measure to say that Haiti is a good place to go. Members of parliament keep saying they are going for benchmarking. Now they need to go for benchmarking on how not to have a ruthless state. So I'm proposing that some of the parliamentarians who are disturbing us here also be put in a plane with our policemen to go and do benchmarking there for a month. And if they come back and they are lucky to be here, then they can tell us how it was for our young people. So let's not talk about it as a good place for our young people. And we can take it further. When we are signing a deal on how to help Haiti, why are we signing it at State House in Nairobi? I think we should sign it there. Get a few people to go. I don't know whether it's the president or the deputy or it is Kindiki. Kindiki can go there and sign it from the State House in Haiti. Just signing how I am. Then that works.
Is it the money?
I believe it is the money, but I have a different view from my good friend, Mr. Kinodia. Haiti is a country that has had a lot of problems. First of all, I remember, was it 2016 or 2015 when they had an earthquake that killed about 40,000?
It's much further than that. I think it was in the year 2012, 11, no, 10 or 9, when so many people died there.
Yes,
it was,
and we are talking about Negroids. These are Africans. They are Haitians, but their origin is in Africa. And therefore, I would call for the UN to come up with a better strategy on how to find better solutions to the problems in Haiti. I remember Obama, then the president, had a lot of problems because they did not react to the earthquake in Haiti, which is now natural, unlike now what is man-made problem, because whatever is happening in Haiti now is man-made. And if you look at Africans wherever they are, be they in Sierra Leone, be they in Haiti, be they in the Dominican Republic, I believe the UN Security Council and the world at large should sit down and come up with a better strategy than looking for policemen in countries that, like Kenya, whose policemen are not known for any good thing that they have done, even for their own citizens in this country, and take them to Haiti. It's an international problem that we have to give. We have to really think on how to solve the Haiti problems one and for all. But I do not believe that even if we are broke, even if our coffers are empty or
they are not empty.
I am saying even if.
Okay. We are buying curtains for 10 million.
Even if our coffers are empty, I don't think that we should just buy
this money is a lot. How is it accounted for?
We do not know. Just like
$9 billion. Then there's an additional $300 million that is coming in, and another 30-something million that is coming. How is this money accounted for?
And that's why I said the best solution would be to train their young men.
Because this money can fit that training.
Yeah, we would make a lot of money as a country. Just bring their young men in their thousands. You know, they'll also eat our arroz, so the farmers will see a surge in the demand for everything that they are growing. I think it's a high time. Oh yeah, Kenya Kwanza has done one good thing. They said they have fertilizer, so it will grow potatoes very quickly and food, and then these Haitians will eat. So even if you bring 2,000 of them here, 5,000, 10,000, we'll be able to feed them because there is government fertilizer. Let's bring them here. There's a way in which we can benefit from them coming here. But for us going there, it doesn't make sense at all.
Actually, there are so many things that do not make sense. Like at one time, Kenya was importing doctors from Cuba. Yeah. And my thinking at that particular juncture was that why can't we have so many of our young people going to train in Cuba as doctors? Instead of importing doctors, we take our students to Cuba, they learn the medicine there, because it makes no sense to bring someone trained in Cuba with facilities there to a country where there are no medical facilities. How does it help? If, for example, we equipped our hospital and have good facilities and take our young doctors to Cuba and then bring them back as doctors, our own children, to treat our own people, that would be better than importing some doctors who would still have allegiance to their mother country. So there are so many things, Mr. Mijungu, as you put it, that are happening in the very wrongly. And you would not even imagine, because we are almost 60 years after independence, and we have never had civil war in this country, meaning that we have been training people consistently, and therefore this country has enough human resource to take it to the next step.
The only reason that the government is now walking back, I'll say walking back, I don't know if they'll walk back entirely on this decision is because Ariel Henry was forced by circumstance, because he's still in Puerto Rico, to resign. So the government says, let the establish a government first in Haiti, then we can send our soldiers. Has that money come?
Maybe that can only be answered by Professor Juguna, because even if it came...
That's why I asked, how is this money accounted for? Does it go to the consolidated fund?
Nobody knows. You remember when there was COVID, US printed some funny dollars. Then inside they were written COVID inside. You know, this is the only nation in the world that decides if they want to make money, if they want to give you money for something, they print money for that specific thing.
The dollars at that time had
they
COVID.
had something, and it was for helping with COVID and all. We are at a place where I do not even think, because that's why I said it's a Haiti Kwanzaa administration. I think the conversation should have been what is good for Kenya. And to make it a Kenya Kwanzaa administration, we would have been dealing with the problems of Kenyans at the moment.
Okay.
The Kenyans you're telling about Haiti right now, make sure that by the time you alight from the matatu, you hold your phone like your life depends on it. And they even hide it in very funny places because you can't cross the street without phone speaking at night. And now you're being told that there are already few policemen who cannot protect you from the phone snatchers. 1,000 of them will be taken away. I think the priority should be Kenyans, because otherwise, if at this rate they are snatching phones, when 1,000 policemen go, they will snatch even our ears and noses.
By the strike of midnight, in about 1 hour, 10 minutes, doctors are officially on strike. From tomorrow. Azimio says Susan Nahumicha, Beldin tells me I have to say the H. It's not silent. Susan Nahumicha, they want her to resign. But that's not even the issue. The issue is from midnight today. If you go to any public hospital, you're not going to get doctors. Is that more priority than this Haiti thing?
Of course.
And how much of a crisis are we facing tomorrow morning?
Of course.
But CASs are more important than doctors. We have money. We want to have CASs, but we don't want to pay doctors. It tells you. The priority is to have a CAS, not a doctor.
That's the import. That's what you're saying.
No, the truth is, what conversations are they having at Parliament? They are having conversations about increasing the size of what you would call cabinet, because those are not even cabinet secretaries. But they're increasing the size of government. They are not worried about doctors. The doctors started threatening they're going to go on strike a very long time ago. So what should be occupying the mouths of parliamentarians today?
It's
how to avert a crisis that means Wanjiko can go to a hospital and find that there is no doctor. But instead of averting that crisis, their conversations in Parliament is on how to increase the size of government and bring some useless, moribund people who will be called CASs. Because I call them useless in the sense that for the time we've not had them, what has gone wrong?
What has not happened in the
What has not happened in the country? In fact, all the things that could have gone wrong have continued going wrong anyway. So this conversation now should get to the place where we say we need a sensitive government, one that looks at the lives of people as important beyond rewarding political cronies.
That's what you think it is?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is very sad that the poor man who will go to a public hospital tomorrow,
In the next 1 hour, 10
in the
minutes.
next few minutes,
Yes.
will not get medical attention. And you see, we have had this problem of seeking private solution to public problems. Ken Mijunku, Fanyamambo and Lempa here are able to take their children or themselves to private hospitals. But any other person who are there may
go
not,
to mission hospitals.
They may not be in a position to access medical attention because of their socioeconomic status. And the middle class, I blame the middle class for not actually joining the doctors in their clamor for better working conditions in counties, because we do know that most of our doctors are in counties. They are employed by county government, and those county governments sometimes are run in a very funny way. So therefore, I have I can only wish doctors a very successful strike, because they have a right to go on strike. Article 41 is very clear that every person has a right to go on strike. So I take this opportunity to wish all the doctors
Really?
a successful
Actually,
strike.
I think we have a solution. We have a very simple solution. First and foremost, I think the law should be changed. Our members of parliament are thoroughly cushioned from the effects of a doctor strike. Because one, they have a medical cover that stretches up to 10 million per member of parliament. And that medical cover allows them to go to private hospitals. What we need to do is to change the law so that if you're a state officer, your medical cover can only take you to a public hospital. You know, today, NHIF, for those who know, if you go to NHIF with these private hospitals, it's a drop in the ocean. In some of them, it's not even accepted. And in fact, they insist you're a poor person. When you have NHIF, go to Kenyatta National Hospital. Go to the referral hospitals. Why is it okay that the medical cover of every poor tax-paying Kenyan, their medical cover is the usual NHIF, which they are changing the name to whatever they are going to change it to. And that person can only access services from those hospitals that are going on strike. But now, he is paying taxes. He's paying a medical cover for another small god called a member of parliament and a member of county assembly and a president and a deputy president.
And
that for whom they pay, oh God, that for whom they pay can go to any private hospital in this country.
Local and abroad.
And they are local and abroad. If we change the law and say that this one for members of parliament can only act in public hospitals.
Are you dreaming? Because
do you know what would happen?
Do you know that
Kenyatta National Hospital would be painted at night?
Do you know
it would have beds at night.
Same people
and it should happen
even
in public schools. I have always said, if we had a law that compelled all public officials to take their children to public schools,
there'd be better places.
I'm telling you, they would have white toilets. Everything in that place, they'll be tiled. They will have flowing water. They would even have, those children would take chicken 3 meals a day. The problem we have is that the people, the taxpayers, who pay for these members of parliament and this elite ruling class, the people who pay their salaries go to those dilapidated schools. And the people for whom we pay go to those good schools and those good hospitals. So what we need to do as Kenyans, if we are going to go on the streets, is to start saying that the medical cover of MPs should be changed. They use the equivalent of an NHIF so that everybody goes to a public hospital. I promise you, they will buy new stretchers at midnight. They will not bring them by a ship, they will fly them.
You're forgetting that the ones who changed the law. Gentlemen, I have 5 minutes on the clock. I need to talk, unless you want to add something on the doctor strike. I know you, doctor strike, you've wished them well. I want to play the video of the week, then we can conclude. Today, the cabinet made a decision on alcohol and drugs, withdrawing licenses, cancelling some and all that. So I'd like to take a look at this video of the week, then we'll come back with about a minute each to comment about the video and what the government is doing, what the cabinet decided today. Take a look.
Unajua huyu tunapaswa natupigia. Hakuna kukaa na yeye ati unakaa na yeye sana.
Tuko form?
Form 1. Nichukue video hii. Na hii yote ni bangi.
Nimeshonelewa. Wewe uone nimeshonelewa.
Ngoja msiguzi hapo. Takupiga wewe.
Nimeshonelewa kabisa na shindano na kila kitu.
Yes, mzee habari yako? Umeleta msichana? Ana ndekeka kidogo tu. Okay. Nani mwingine ako nayo?
Wewe ulipewa na nani?
Hiyo bangi yote.
This is a police case.
Hii police case.
Your thoughts, Lempa? That's a student. I think Form 1, Form 2, we don't know who shot the video, but it's been on the internet. And now because there's even Rigadi, is it Gachagua laws or Rigadi laws, something like that, against alcohol and drug abuse. Your comment on that? That's a student.
Yeah, I would like to commend the person who took the video because it's very good to enlighten Kenyans on the tricks that are used by the drug traffickers, because you realize that behind every consumer of such cannabis, there is a cartel. It's a big group of criminals who are actually selling these drugs to children. This also calls a lot of parenting, because as parents must tell their children that there is crime does not pay, because as you heard the person talking in the video saying that this is a police case, I don't think such a student will escape it, and therefore criminals who are selling drugs to students must be, we really must chase them and bring them to book. It's very sad that such a thing should happen in a school, although we do know that even during our time in high school, some students used to bring cannabis, but I don't think it was in such
to extent.
Yeah, to this extent.
A very quick one. I've always said, take away the customer and the trade will come to an end. If I was sitting where these people are sitting, they are doing this thing from the wrong side. I am a father of a son. And I have always said, I will be the first parent to grab my son and refuse with him and say that mine is not going into this vice. And every parent who is listening to me out there, please, kataa na mtoto wako. You know these people, what they do, by the time they get to standard 7 all the way to Form 4, when they finish school or when they are idle, they go to Mama Pima, they go to the idler's corner, they sit there, and this is where they practice those vices. The minute you refuse with your child and you say, I am going to deny that market one child, and that child is mine, I will deny that market one child. The minute you take away from the customer from that trade must die. And so I've always told people, stop fighting alcohol. Pouring alcohol has proven not to work. And imprisoning these people have proven not to work. The minute you take away the customer, and I'm appealing to every parent who is looking at me and watching me on TV today, I want you to make a conscious decision and say, I am taking my son away. I am taking my daughter away. Mine will not be part of this. And all of us start interventions in high schools, in primary schools, talking to students and making them know that this is a bad place to go. It happened to us when we were in high school. There was this conversation about HIV, AIDS, and these sexually transmitted diseases. But unfortunately, the way it was brought, it was you see the graphic images and you're like, I am not doing this. And that fear kept us from it. If we have to find a way to instill that fear for uncontrolled illicit brews and substances, to make sure that we take away the customers. Let those who are drinking, some can be rehabilitated. Some are lost, by the way. I am sure they will die. I can promise you they will die. They are lost. They are beyond rehabilitation. But we can take this and say in the next 4 years, there will be no new customers. And Mama Pima, I can tell you, start selling to the ones you are selling to, knowing that there will be no fresh supply of drinkers. Because every parent who has listened to me today will refuse with their son, will refuse with their daughter, watch him every step, kataa na yeye sema huyu haingii pale. If we all do that, Mama Pimas across the country will wake up and in 4 years, they will not have a customer.
The business will be dead. Thank you for coming. Your parting shot, as we leave in less than a minute.
My parting shot is that Kenyans should not lose hope. Although we are experiencing very adverse economic times, every cloud has a silver lining, and I believe with the time, resilience will pay.
Resilience will pay. Fanyamambo, your parting shot, 30 seconds.
I think I'm grateful to have been here. It's an honor and it's a privilege. Thank you, KTN. Thank you for this opportunity. It's always a blessing to be here. Let us continue loving our country.
And my parting shot, I hope you join us in the fight, because we have to ensure that we regain our footing as the media, and we can only do it with like-minded individuals and organizations. It's very important to us. For you to be on this table next month and the other month, we need to be here. So thank you so much, Fanyamambo, for coming tonight. Lempa, asanteni sana kukuja. We'll have these discussions until the end of time. We cannot stop speaking, because when we stop speaking, that's when everything goes wrong. So long as we have a constitutionally protected right to speak, we'll continue speaking and do our part. And our part, as I said, is to put the government in check. My name is Ken Mijungo on behalf of the whole team. Thank you so much for watching. Polycarp Omondi Aleron on sign language. We get this opportunity to do this again next week, same place, same time. Ashley Mazuri is right here tomorrow on the round table, if I'm not wrong. And of course, we start broadcasting straight at 6 a.m. Have a good night and God bless.